Hey guys, this is Halion. We're back again with part 4 of our weapon guide series, and this one's going to be all about the bow. So at first here we're going to talk all about the 4 different aspects with the bow and how to play with each style that we have there. Then we're going to go through individually all the different hammers for the bow and just talk about what I think works best with each hammer and aspect combination. And then at the end we're going to go over some boon combinations that might work well with each of those as well. Just keep in mind this is just my opinion, and of course you can get almost anything to work in this game. I promise you there's no best thing, there's no worst thing. I always encourage you to try out everything, even if I don't necessarily like it, and feel free to let me know in the comments how you feel about it yourself. I don't know if you know this, but I also stream on twitch.tv/Halion, and you're missing out on some amazing quality content right now even. Chat's telling me it's not an item, but I disagree. Inspirational stuff right there. Alright guys, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you want more content from me. Let's do it. Alright guys, before we get started, I just want to go over the basic move set with the bow here. So you have an attack right here that charges up, and when the line flashes white like that, that's when you want to release to get a power shot off. So power shot requires specific timing, and that'll maximize your damage there. The special move releases a volley of arrows, each arrow dealing 10 damage at a time now, and you get a widespread pattern. There will be some differences with the aspect there. You also have a dash strike with the bow, which happens when you start holding down the attack button immediately after a dash. So you'd want to do something like this, and this will actually get you better and quicker power shot timing. It does take a lot of work to kind of learn the timing and get it down and turn that into muscle memory, but once you do, I think you can dole out a lot of damage just by using these power shots on the bow attack here actually. So I recommend just practicing quite a bit, and after time you'll learn that this is actually a great way of playing the game. The other important thing to note is with the special you can use it in 2 different ways. You could use it from a distance and coat swarms of enemies with maybe a curse effect like Ares' Doom, or you can use it to kind of shotgun one large enemy and deal a lot of damage that way too. Alright guys, let's start going over the aspects. So first we have aspect of Zagreus, and like with all the other aspects of Zagreus for the other weapons, it's not a super exciting aspect, but it does actually do quite a bit, I think, here. So your critical attack chance is increased by 10% when you have aspect of Zagreus on with the bow. So this means your attack, not your special, just has a passive 10% critical hit chance here. So that means that our power shots and regular attacks here are going to have a 10% crit, which can be very, very powerful when paired with the right boons that we'll go over a little bit later. There's not really a whole lot else to say about Zagreus. You really just want to continuously do these dash power shots as much as possible and go around the room like that. You're probably not going to want to utilize your special too much here unless you get a nice curse effect on it, which we'll go over in a few minutes too. Next up, we have Aspect of Chiron. Your special automatically seeks the foe last struck by your attack. Your max shots per special goes down to 8. So this has been recently changed by Supergiant, the developer of Hades. So the bow's special damage got reduced, but Chiron's shots got increased by 1 a little bit. If you're a Switch user, you may not see this change yet, but just be on the lookout for it. So Aspect of Chiron actually got a little bit of a decrease in damage, but it's not that important. It's still a very, very powerful aspect, I think, here. This is what it looks like. You get a little bullseye on the target after you inflict an attack on them, and it lasts a few seconds there, and now any special we use is going to seek out that target. That's really powerful. So this is a very powerful move here, and it's very safe because you can actually get very far away from the enemies and still have those special arrows hit. You can have a lot of distance with your enemies. The only downside here that you might see is that this special animation from the bow actually takes a long time to come out. It kind of locks you in place for a full second and a half there, basically, and that can actually leave you very, very vulnerable to enemy attacks. So you definitely want to keep your distance here when utilizing this, but you can definitely deal a lot of damage. There are some really nice hammers that we're going to go over that can help with this too and maximize that damage. Next up, we have Aspect of Hera. Your cast loads your bloodstones into your next attack, firing on impact, and also that bloodstone drop time is now reduced to 5 seconds. So this is a very powerful aspect too. So I just have to kind of demonstrate it here. You can take all 3 of your casts. You'll see they just kind of disappear for a second there, and then when you fire them, all 3 of them are going to actually hit the next time you hit with your attack. And if they do get lodged into an enemy, they only stay there for 5 seconds, and that's actually really important because with Aspect of Terror, you really want to focus on a cast build, and having your Bloodstone stuck in an enemy for 10-15 seconds would actually be a huge downside. So just having that decreased drop time with this actually makes it really good. You can utilize really any cast with this aspect and do pretty well, but I'll go over some of the best ones that I think we have later. You can either load all 3, you can load 1 or 2, whatever amount you want, but you definitely want to focus on your cast damage with this aspect. Alright, last up we have Aspect of Rama. You have Celestial Sharanga, which can cause shared suffering. Your shared suffering damages 60% of your attack. So Rama plays very differently, just like all of the final aspects for each weapon. So when you have Rama on, if you use this special, it's going to look very different. You get, I think, 3 or 4 shots that kind of bounce around and can hit multiple enemies, and it also causes this debuff to appear on those enemies. That debuff means they take additional damage from the attack. So you'll see multiple damage numbers here when I attack now because they get an additional 60% of the original attack damage. And that'll go for any enemy that has this debuff on them, so you can have multiple enemies being inflicted by your attack, even though you're only hitting actually 1 enemy with it. This is a very, very powerful aspect. It's seen quite a few buffs recently with version 1.0 launching here. So you have a really chunky attack. It takes quite a bit longer to charge up, which means power shots, they are quite a bit more difficult to pull off, but you can still definitely do it, and I recommend just giving it a shot here. But it definitely takes a little bit more work to get the timing down, even more so than Aspect of Zagreus. The other thing to note about Rama's special here, you can actually rapid fire it and just to coat a bunch of enemies with curses if you get the right boons on your special, which we'll go over in a minute. But this is actually a viable way to win, although the damage can often drop off later on. Alright guys, so now I have the wiki pulled up on the right here with each hammer for the bow. We're going to go through them one at a time, and we're just going to discuss what I think of them, which ones I think might be the most powerful, and which ones I think are a little bit underwhelming. So first up, we have Twin Shot. Your attack fires 2 shots side by side, but has reduced range. So this, I think, is actually an incredibly powerful hammer to start off. Number 1, and I think it might be number 1 here. It's not necessarily something you're going to look for with Aspect of Chiron or Hera, obviously, because those are focused on their special and cast builds more so. But it's incredibly powerful with Aspect of Zagreus, incredibly powerful with Aspect of Rama here. And I mean, when you think about it, it literally doubles your attack damage. Yes, it has reduced range, but a lot of times that doesn't matter that much. So you definitely want to focus with attack here. And like I said, anything that doubles your hits is going to be really, really powerful in terms of hammer. This to me is going to be an S tier hammer. I'm going to take it pretty much every time with Aspect of Zagreus or Rama here. It's just an amazing hammer to get. I recommend it, definitely. Next, we have Sniper Shot. Your attack deals plus 200% damage to distant foes. So when you use Sniper Shot, there is an additional little graphic in that power shot timing line. It'll kind of indicate to you at what range you need to be in order to actually get that bonus damage. This to me is a hammer that's a little underwhelming. It can kind of be difficult to actually utilize that additional damage. A lot of times enemies are going to be coming towards you and you can't really get that bonus damage easily because they're going to be constantly moving towards you and you can't really get them at the range that you want. I don't necessarily think it's a bad hammer, but I think just in comparison to a lot of other hammers offered with the bow here, it's not that great. I'd put this probably near the bottom in terms of hammer rankings on the bow here. Next, we got Explosive Shot. Your attack deals plus 300% base damage in an area, but charges slower. It charges about half as fast as before, so getting power shots off with Explosive Shot is very, very difficult. It's hard to find that time investment to actually make that happen. So you're not really going to get that full 300% a lot of times, but I do think Explosive Shot has a little bit of usability here because you don't have, this is a way that if you're not very familiar or you don't have that muscle memory yet to get a lot of power shots off, Explosive Shot can kind of let you cheat out some of that damage without depending on those power shots. So you can just kind of get these quick hits off with Explosive Shot and still deal a decent amount of damage here. The explosion does have a little bit of AoE range, which means that you can hit multiple enemies with it in an area. However, you do not have that piercing effect anymore that you used to have with the bow, which means that it's going to explode on the first enemy that it hits, and it will not go through those enemies. I think it's an okay hammer. Sometimes it kind of depends. It pairs pretty well with a couple other hammers that you're going to see here. Twin shot's pretty nice with it, and when you see it, triple shot's actually kind of okay here. I kind of put it middle of the pack. Next up, we have Flurry Shot. Hold down attack to shoot rapidly, but you cannot power shot. So what that means is you no longer charge your attack with the bow here if you take Flurry Shot. Instead, you just shoot it out very quickly. I actually think this is a really nice hammer and can pair with a lot of things really well. So just to be clear, you cannot get it with Aspect of Rama. I think it works really well with all three of the other aspects, though, honestly. It's a little strange with Hera just because if you take it, that means you cannot control where those casts are going to land necessarily, and they're always going to hit at the end of your shot. So Flurry Shot can be paired with things like Twin Shot. That makes it really good. You cannot get it with Explosive Shot. Triple Shot's fine with it. I believe you can get it with Chain Shot here. Yep, so Chain Shot's actually pretty good with it, that you'll see in a minute here. There's a lot of good combinations here, and again, this is a nice one if you are still fairly new to the bow and you're not used to that power shot timing. I think it's actually fine. Now, not being able to power shot means that you're going to deal a little bit less damage per attack hit, but the rapidness of it can possibly make up for it. I think it's a really nice hammer. I put it near the top, probably A tier. Next up, you have Piercing Volley. Your special pierces foes and deals additional damage to their armor. I don't think that 400% is actually true that you see on the wiki here. I think that has actually changed, but I'm not positive. Piercing Volley is one that doesn't really fit into a lot of spaces here currently. So you can get it with the Aspect of Chiron, but it doesn't really work well. It doesn't mean that your shots are going to pierce your enemy that you have homed in on and then hit them again, and it's not really going to hit the next enemy either. It just kind of doesn't do anything. I guess you could say at least you get that bonus armor damage there, so it's kind of okay. But there's just so many better hammers that there's usually not much of a point in taking Piercing Volley here. I'd leave this pretty near the bottom here, I'd say, in terms of tiers. I guess you could utilize it with Aspect of Zag or Hera potentially, with some nice curses if you have it on the special there. You actually cannot see this with Rama, so it kind of doesn't matter there, but I don't think you'd necessarily want to see it with Rama anyway, because the bounce effect with Rama's special is actually really nice to make sure you hit additional enemies with it. So, not a great hammer, I'd say, overall. Next up, we have Perfect Shot. Your power shot is easier to execute and deals plus 150% damage. This one is actually one I've been warming up to more recently. This actually can work really well with Rama because it makes those power shots easier for you, which are kind of difficult already. And that extra damage can actually be really, really nice. I think this works really well with Aspect of Zag and Rama mostly. I do want to play with it a little bit more, but I think it's a fine hammer to take most of the time. It's good probably to practice your power shots with Rama with. It might kind of mess up your timing when you don't get it, though, is the only issue I could see with it. But I think it's still a really nice damage increase for both of those. Next up, we have Relentless Volley. Your special shoots plus 4 shots. So this is obviously going to be best with Aspect of Chiron. It does work with Rama, but I'm not so sure it's going to be that important at any point with that. But it's really just so good with Chiron here. There's a few other hammers that you really want to see with Chiron, and this is going to be one of the two, basically. So this can be really powerful. Just getting 4 more extra hits with Chiron is just really amazing here. Lets you stack up that damage even higher. Those shots are going to home in, so there's really no downside to it. I wouldn't really want to take this with any other aspect, honestly. I just can't really think of a great opportunity where it's going to be very meaningful here, except maybe if you already have another hammer already, potentially, which we'll go over. So, really amazing with Chiron, not very useful otherwise, I'm afraid. Next, we have Triple Shot. Your attack fires 3 shots in a spread pattern. So this is kind of a very spread pattern. It's kind of hard to hit the same enemy with more than 1 shot here if you're using Triple Shot, which means that it's not great at single target damage. It is possible, I believe, to hit the same enemy with more than one of them, but not necessarily all 3. I think it's still a very good pick, though, because it helps you control the room a little bit better, especially with the aspect of Zagreus, which kind of struggles when you have a lot of enemies in a room. Triple shot can kind of help that a little bit. I think it works out really well with Rama, which has a much wider attack space there. I think it's actually a really amazing hammer with that. And it works okay with Chiron and Hera, too, actually. It's a kind of middle-of-the-road hammer that you kind of like to see with any of them if you don't get the super amazing ones here. I'd probably put it as a B or A pick hammer. Next up, we have Charge Volley. Hold down your special for up to 300% damage. Minimum range is reduced, though. So this actually got changed a little bit. The wiki might be slightly off in the damage increase here, I think. I think it might be 250% if I remember correctly now. So this is a really interesting hammer. So first off, you cannot get it with Chiron, and you cannot get it with Rama. You wouldn't want to get it with Rama anyway. If you could get it with Chiron, it'd be insane. So this damage increase is actually phenomenal. And it's kind of strange because that means if you can't get it with Chiron or Rama, you can only get it with Zagreus or Hera. And it's kind of hard to think of times like, why would I want to use my special with those aspects? Well, this hammer means you want to use your special. This is the kind of hammer that could transform what you're going to do in a run when you choose aspect of Zag or Hera into, I'm going to focus only on using the special. So some recent changes that mean it's not quite as amazing as it used to be, but you can kind of still full spec into a charge volley build if you see it offered. You just put a really high percentage special boon on there and you can really deal a lot of damage if you can shotgun enemies with it. So your strategy would be to basically get charge volley, get a special increase from Artemis, Athena, Demeter, or Aphrodite, and then you just get up into enemies' faces or backs, you charge up that special for a second or two, unleash, and you're going to deal a lot of damage. It's really fun, but it is just kind of a one-trick pony build, obviously, but it's fun to try out every now and again, I think. Next up, we have Chain Shot. Your attack bounces to up to 3 foes, dealing plus 15% damage for each. This is another hammer that I think can kind of work well in a lot of instances, sort of middle of the road. It's really good with aspect of Zag and Rama. It's kind of okay with Chiron and Hera if you don't get the magical ones there. I guess you could say when it comes to aspect of Hera, there aren't a lot of super important hammers here, obviously. You kind of just want something to mostly help your attack probably here. So Chain Shot is probably a pretty good pick for that, since you're mostly going to be focusing on a cast build there. So the Chain Shot, just keep in mind your attack will no longer pierce enemies. Instead, it'll hit the first and then try to bounce up to a few other nearby enemies. But that increased damage is actually pretty significant. You can really feel it when you're using aspect of Zag or Rama there, and it's pretty nice. If you do take this with aspect of Chiron, though, keep in mind that your homing ability with the special will actually end up only triggering on the last enemy that this hits, and it might kind of mess up what you're trying to do with Chiron, so you may want to avoid it, but it's really not a big downside. It might be worth the attack increase. I'd probably put this as a B tier, maybe even A tier, with aspect of Zag and Rama here. Next up, we have Point Blank Shot. Your attack deals plus 150% damage to nearby foes. So this is actually S tier if you can combine it with Twin Shot, I think. This is a very, very, very powerful one if you get the right other hammer basically to go with it. I would not consider this a great first hammer pick necessarily, because sometimes you just might not get the right second hammer to go well with it, but it's not bad, I'd still say. So you can get some really crazy damage with aspect of Zagreus and Rama here with it. You cannot combine this with things like Sniper Shot, so that's kind of important here. It does give you that little bit of a line indicator if you do take Point Blank Shot to kind of indicate where you need to be in order to get the increased damage, which is nice. So again, works amazingly well with Twin Shot. It works pretty well with Chain Shot and Triple Shot too, so there's some really nice combinations here. So I'd probably put this as an A or a B, and it really depends what your other hammer options were basically earlier on. Up next, we have Concentrated Volley. Your special deals plus 3 base damage for each consecutive hit to a foe. This is the kind of hammer that I can see when reading the text doesn't sound great, right? Plus 3 base damage, that doesn't sound very good. But you gotta keep in mind, the base damage on the bow special on the live PC version of the game is only 10. So if you get plus 3 for each hit, and you're using aspect of Chiron, that is actually a huge percentage increase when you think about it. This is the #1 hammer picked with Aspect to Chiron here, for sure. So you really, really, really want to see this. And then if you're able to combine this with Relentless Shot, which we saw earlier, man, it's really crazy. I can't think of a lot of other instances where you'd want to take this really with any of the other aspects. Maybe if you get Charged Volley with Aspect to Zag or Hera first, maybe you'd want to try out this with Concentrated Volley. You actually cannot see this offered with Aspect of Rama here. So this is really kind of just a one-trick pony with Aspect to Chiron, but it's so good. It's so powerful. I highly recommend it. S tier for Chiron, kind of pretty low tier for the other aspects though. Last on our list is Repulse Shot. Your Celestial Sharinga attack creates a blast wave around you. So this is the hammer that is exclusive for Aspect of Rama. So what it's talking about here is while you're charging your attack with Rama, you will emit this circular blast wave around Zagreus that will knock back foes and stagger them. It does not deal any damage. So I think this is one where maybe I could use a little bit more practice with it to determine it, but honestly, anything that doesn't deal damage is kind of hard for me to think this would ever be that useful. So you cannot stagger or really knock back bosses, and that's where this would be most important probably, right? So therefore, this does almost literally nothing to bosses, so I can't imagine it ever being that useful for us. There's just too many other hammers that would actually increase our build, I think. I think it's kind of interesting in a sense to take in order to keep enemies from attacking you while you're trying to build up a big power shot with Rama here, but for the most part, I'm not so certain it's ever going to be that useful. I would probably avoid it even when using Rama, but like I said earlier, you're welcome to try it out and let me know what you think about it. Alright guys, for our last segment here, I'm just going to provide you with a nice list of boons to pair with each aspect here and how I would want to play each of them here. So we're going to start off here with the Aspect of Zagreus. So Aspect of Zagreus, you want to focus in on your attack. So you really want to just get a percentage base boon from Aphrodite, Artemis, Athena, or Demeter, really. So when you have passive crit chance, like with Aspect to Zag here, Artemis is actually a little bit diminished in power level once you already have some crit chance. So therefore, I think actually Aphrodite might be the best bet here if you really want to go for the ultimate power with Aspect to Zag. It's also great to note that Artemis's dash attack can work really, really well with Aspect to Zag here too. You can actually get a nice percentage increase on that, and I think that's actually a really amazing boon to pair with this if you can. After that, nothing is too important with the Aspect of Zag here. You can put something like Doom on your special, or maybe even Zeus, and it kind of helps out a little bit, but you really want to focus on those dash attacks when you're using this aspect mostly. So after that, there's really nothing too much else you want to look for. So next we have Aspect of Chiron. So this is an aspect that I think is really versatile and really fun to use because it works so well with so many different things. So first off, you can go really simple with this and just put Artemis's special on it, and then just deal out a lot of crits. You just gotta hope for those right hammers to show up like we discussed there for that one, and you can just deal a lot of damage that way. But there's also some other really cool things that you could do with Aspect of Chiron. You can actually put Dionysus on the special with Chiron here and keep those hangover stacks up on enemies and actually deal quite a bit of damage. If you're going to do that, I recommend putting something like Ares on your attack and maybe going for the duo boon, Curse of Nausea, and actually get those hangover stacks to trigger even faster and deal a lot of damage that way. If you really want to go for something really weird with it, you could even go Demeter on the special here. You can deal some decent damage just alone with that, but if you're able to, you can grab Arctic Blast. It's a little bit of a meme build, I'm not gonna lie, but it can be really cool to see all those explosions going off, I think. Maybe cool to try if you get the time someday. One thing I might tell you to avoid with Aspect of Chiron is actually putting Zeus on the special here. So it sounds really good and it seems like it should be a really powerful combination here, but unfortunately there is an internal cooldown for how often those lightning bolts can strike a single enemy, so oftentimes you're only going to get 1, maybe 2 lightning bolts to trigger for each special, so it winds up being pretty weak overall. There's too many other good options here with Chiron to really make it want to work. One really fun thing you can do with Chiron still, though, is actually put Poseidon on the special here, and then you can try to get Zeus and enable Sea Storm Duo Boon, And while yes, you still do have that internal cooldown on the lightning bolt, it's still really powerful because you got that percentage attack, then you have the lightning bolt, and then maybe you can get some other Zeus boons like double strike or jolted, and it's just like a really fun and cool build to see. Not to mention get the knock foes all over the place. It's really fun, and I regularly recommend trying that one out if you get the chance. Alright, next up we have Aspect of Hera here. So this is one where there's just so many options. Almost every single cast works really well with this. The ones that kind of might be a little bit strange are things like Crystal Beam and Slicing Shot from Ares. Those ones are kind of weird, and you might just kind of want to avoid them with Hera overall. So one amazing option is going to be Phalanx Shot with Athena, and you can actually segue that into Parting Shot from Aphrodite and Athena there. You can actually deal a lot of damage that way. Parting Shot can actually be a very powerful duo boon here with Aspect of Hera, actually. Even Aphrodite's cast works really well here with Hera. Again, you can segue into Parting Shot with that. You can even do Poseidon's cast and try to segue that into the Artemis duo boon, Mirage Shot, and you can even do Trippy Shot here, which works really well, and there's lots of duo boons and even a legendary that you can use with that. There's just so many options with Hera. I guess my top picks would probably be Phalanx Shot and Trippy Shot. Those ones are just so much fun to use. I recommend trying out those first if you get the chance. Alright, last up we got Aspect of Rama. So in a lot of ways, you kind of want to play Rama the same way you'd play Aspect of Zagreus, I think. You really want to focus in on your attack damage, which means taking those attack percent boons. So Artemis, Aphrodite, Athena, and Demeter. But the nice thing about Rama is you got a little bit more leeway with the special. So you can do something like Ares or Dionysus or Zeus on the special, and you can try to focus in on that, although the damage falls off later on. It still works really well early on, especially Zeus. You can actually just spam the special through Tartarus if you have Zeus on there, and you can clear all the rooms very, very quickly, and then hopefully you can get a nice attack boon like we discussed, and you can kind of combine that into a really nice build overall. But yeah, Aspect of Rama, very powerful, lots of high damage output. You really got to get used to utilizing that shared suffering mechanic to maximize your damage there, but it works so well, and I really recommend it. Alright guys, that does it for the bow, and I gotta say, the bow is probably my favorite weapon in the whole game. I think all four aspects just have a lot of viability in the game. They're all really fun to play, lots of ways to deal damage, lots of different play styles. It's just so much fun to play with the bow, I think. Let me know what your favorite bow builds are here down below. We're going to be talking about the fist in our next weapons guide, so keep an eye out for that video coming up shortly. And after we finish up our weapons guide, I got a few other videos planned for us. So remember to subscribe if you want to see more Hades content from me. Alright guys, that does it. So I'll see you next time. Bye bye now.